I never believed in ghosts, not until last winter. I'm a contractor, and I was hired to oversee renovations at Black Hollow Asylum in rural Virginia. The place was set to become some kind of boutique hotel, the type of thing wealthy people love for the ambiance. But Black Hollow had a reputation. Locals whispered about its history, unexplained disappearances, patients who'd screamed about something in the walls, and a riot in the 1950s that left half the staff dead. I thought it was just old stories. The project started off smoothly. Most of the asylum was just crumbling stone and rotted wood, but the lower levels, where the maximum security patients had been kept, were practically untouched. And that's where we found the door. It was behind a rusted metal panel in the basement. I'll admit we only found it because one of my guys leaned against the wall, and the whole thing gave way. There it was, a thick iron door, bolted shut with chains and covered in strange carvings. Not words, symbols. The crew didn't want to open it. My foreman, Luis, said it was probably sealed for a reason, but curiosity got the better of me. That door wasn't in the blueprints, and I figured it could lead to a hidden room or stash of historical artifacts. I called the client, who gave me the green light to document everything. So we cut the chains. Behind the door was a small, windowless room, maybe 10 feet by 10. The walls were lined with claw marks, deep gouges that went right into the stone. In the center of the room, there were chains bolted to the floor, and in the corner, a pile of something that looked like hair. The smell hit us next. It was this awful mix of decay and burnt metal. Luis gagged and refused to step inside, but I did. I had to. The hair in the corner wasn't hair at all. It was a bundle of fabric, shredded and blackened, like something had been trying to tear it apart. Then I noticed the scratches, not just on the walls, but on the floor, too, leading straight to the door. Whatever had been chained up in that room had tried to escape. That's when the first incident happened. One of the crew, Mike, came running down the hallway, pale as a sheet. He said he'd heard footsteps above him in the east wing. We all knew that wing was empty. It hadn't been structurally sound for years. Probably an animal, I said, though I didn't believe it. Mike swore he'd seen someone, a tall figure moving between the shadows. When we went to check, there was no one there. But the air was ice cold, and we could hear faint tapping. By the end of the day, half the crew refused to come back. Luis tried to convince me to shut the project down, but I couldn't. Not without more answers. That night I stayed late to document the room, alone. I set up a camera and started taking measurements. That's when I noticed the chains on the floor were moving. Just slightly, like something had brushed against them. I told myself it was the draft, even though there was no wind in that sealed room. Then I heard it, a faint scratching sound coming from behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing. Still, the sound grew louder, more frantic, like nails raking against stone. It wasn't until I looked down that I saw it. Claw marks were appearing on the floor, fresh ones. I grabbed my camera and bolted, slamming the iron door shut behind me. The next morning, I tried to convince the client to abandon the project. I didn't even care about my contract anymore, I just wanted out. But they insisted on continuing, so we sealed the room again. Bolts, chains, everything. We didn't make it through another week. Luis quit after seeing a woman in a hospital gown staring at him through a second-story window. The problem? That floor had no windows. Another worker, Angela, said she felt something grab her ankle in the stairwell, and when she lifted her pant leg, there were hand-shaped bruises on her skin. The last straw came when the camera I'd left in the room was finally retrieved. Most of the footage was static, but in the final minutes there was a shadow, a tall, thin figure standing in the doorway. Its face wasn't human. The project was canceled, and Black Hollow remains abandoned. People still say they hear screams from the basement, but I won't go back. Not for any amount of money. Whatever was chained in that room, it's still there, and it's waiting.